could ask a quick favour. If you're listening to this, please hit the subscribe button and the follow button. Like, share, rate, review the podcast. It helps more than you realise.
There's been quite a few drip-fed issues of equality throughout my journey, I guess. So when my marriage broke down in 2008, I went back to university, did a degree in event management, decided that I wanted to work in the events industry, and gleefully applied for jobs in London, thinking I would just walk into this amazing events job and that would be the start of my new career. And at least 3 different places turned me down and were quite clear that it was because I was a single mum.
But for a woman going into it, I need it to change. I need it to change, and it's my problem. Shouldn't be, but that's the way it feels it is. So that's that. We've got to talk reality. Especially in football, I find you've got to talk reality, and it still is, the world is still essentially sexist, and there's still a lot of change to be made. And I tell you what though, if we can do it in football, we can do it anywhere.
I just knew that it was something that I really, really had to do. Like, I didn't see any other option at that time. I still don't. I still think the mission is really important. I still think that women need representation. And I just felt that I don't know what I'm doing, but the only way that I will get to know what I'm doing is just to keep on this path. And it took an awful lot of resilience, and it was difficult. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was a very big company and their manifesto was leaked on how women should and shouldn't behave, and it was wear heels a certain length, talk at a lower tone of voice, don't laugh too high pitched. And it was one of the big global companies, and I was just it's trying to get that mission out there that it's okay to have joy, and joy is concomitant with health. It's so important.
The more that I campaign for women's football and for women to be footballers, for girls to be playing and learning those lessons of leadership and resilience, even what you're talking about, that goes so smoothly into the world of business, making decisions, focusing, teamwork, all the stuff they learn on the pitch, doing it in public so you're not self-conscious all the time. Do you know what I mean? So important for girls and women. Men have had access to this for years. The more we break down one set of stereotypes on one side, the more we allow the other side to just be who they are. We get all little boys at Lewes FC women's matches seeing these women as great role models and meaning they don't have to do it if they don't want to do it. Do you know what I mean? And we get the girls at the men's matches that can see that you can go either way. You can be whatever gender you are and follow your own path. This is what we're trying to say. Be yourself.
I believe every business owner has a story to tell. Through seeking true, authentic insights about the entrepreneurial journey, I provide a platform for our peers to share their stories and inspire those that listen. This is the County Business Talk podcast, powered by Picture Book Films. Okay, welcome to another episode of the County Business Talks podcast. We have a very special episode this week as I'm joined by 2 guests. We're recording this episode 2 days prior to the Lionesses Euro 2022 quarter-final clash with Spain right here at the Amex. This highlights how far the women's game has come, but still a long way from achieving equality within the game. With that in mind, who better to join me than the elected director at Lewes Football Club, Karen Dobres, alongside the founder of Co-Women, the social club for Sussex women in business, Jo Child, as they have recently joined forces to work together and push further ways to strive for equality in sport and business. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, Karen, Jo, welcome.
Thank you.
Absolutely delighted to have you guys here. Look, we're gonna delve straight in, and I just want to find out from you both really what sort of led you to the sort of positions where you are now. So, Karen, obviously becoming director at Lewes FC, and Jo, what inspired you to start and set up Co-Women? So,
absolutely. So the first thing to say about Lewes FC is we're 100% community owned, and that means that we have a board of directors elected from the ownership. So once you become an owner, which is very easy, it's just £50 a year, 3 clicks away on our website, you can stand for election, and you write an election address, and then you get voted onto the board. So that happens once a year. You've got a term of 3 years. And first of all, I started to volunteer for the club in 2017 when the club introduced the concept of gender equality to football by paying the women's team the same as the men and valuing them the same, resourcing them the same. And I was interested in this. and started to volunteer and started to tell people, really communicate about what Lewes FC were doing, especially to women who may not necessarily like football because of the gender divide around football. And I got so into it and started to really encourage women to come through the turnstiles to the women's matches in solidarity with the cause. And I started to get sponsors on board that I thought I might as well stand for election here and become a director, because I'm already doing so much for the club, and it gives me a bit more of a platform, and an authority with which to say the stuff I'm saying. So I stood for election and became a director in 2019. So actually, in October, when we have our AGM, I have to decide whether to re-stand or step down for a bit.
Have you thought about that? What?
I'm thinking about it, Sam. There's so much still to do. So
sure.
I'm thinking about it, how best to do what I need to do with the club.
Amazing. Jo, talk to me about Co-Women and the setup and that.
Yeah, so there's been quite a few drip-fed issues of equality throughout my journey, I guess. So when my marriage broke down in 2008, I went back to university, did a degree in event management, decided that I wanted to work in the events industry, and gleefully applied for jobs in London, thinking I would just walk into this amazing events job and that would be the start of my new career. And at least 3 different places turned me down and were quite clear that it was because I was a single mum. And one, I don't think it would happen now. I mean, this is over 10 years ago. And one lady sat me in the interview and she said, "We don't really like to employ single mums because you will need a lot of time off for your children." So that was the first kind of hint that I had, I guess, that there was a real issue. Like, if I'd have been a single dad, would I have faced the same issue? And then over the years, I went just sort of bounced from job to job after that, and then decided that the only option for me was to start my own events business. And then I delved into the wonderful world of networking and came across comments such as, "Has your husband helped you get this started? Where have you found the help from?" And I just say it just felt very insidious, the assumptions made that a woman in business would have had to have help somewhere, or that it was a hobby or a side project. So I struggled a little bit with the networking in general. I just found it very corporate. I felt that it didn't really feed into neurodiversity either. I just felt it was very formal, a very certain way of being. And gradually over time, what started as a very generic events business very quickly became something that needed to be for women to feel confident and empowered in business and not feel the massive layers of imposter syndrome that many, many women feel. So, yeah.
Sure. It's such a powerful, because obviously my wife's a criminal solicitor. We've been together 20 odd years, went to school together. She's always really wanted to, that's what she wanted to do since she was 11. So and it was really strange. You sort of met, even now that she's been made managing partner recently of the criminal law firm she works for, and actually even when they was talking about it, just as an off the cuff, but the partner there, when they was talking, said, "Oh, are you going to speak to your husband about obviously the additional hours you're going to work?" And she was like, "Well, no, I don't need to check with my husband about what I'm going to do with my career," and because she knows she's got my full support and vice versa. So I guess the issue is only a few months ago, and it's still, I guess, one of the reasons, I guess, for me, we've done the International Women's Day featuring SBT, and I was so excited about obviously having you both on, because we're so far away from where we obviously need to be. So I think these conversations are obviously so important. I'm keen with you, Karen, like with the football club. What, in regards to football in general, like getting involved, being a woman, I guess, in sport, how did that sort of feel, like getting involved in that sort of side of stuff? Because it's still a very male-dominated arena, isn't it?
I mean, it's hugely male-dominated, and the disparities are vast between, we can talk about what women are paid as compared to what men are paid, but also the pitches that the women play on. Do they play on the same pitch, or are their pitches inferior and much further away from the town that they're representing, so making it harder for people to come to? And the prize funds, like for the FA Cup, we've been campaigning to equalise those prize funds, and there's been a bit of success lately with it going up, but it's still, like, I think it's 1.8 million for the men, and I can't remember now how much it is for the women. It used to be 25,000, but it's gone up. But it's still a massive disparity. And also, like, the things that people do on their websites with their women's teams are incredible. Like, this doesn't cost any money at all, but they often have like their first team and their women's team. And you have to find it, you know, on the website. And they have, for example, most clubs, let's pick a couple of famous ones like Arsenal or Manchester United. You'll get Arsenal, Manchester United on Twitter, and you get Arsenal women, Manchester United women, whereas we have Lewes FC men and Lewes FC women to make it the same. Like, there's little things you can do that put out a signal to equalise a bit more. But yeah, I mean, it's for me, getting involved in football was something like when I first said that I was going to stand to be a director at Lewes FC, my friends were laughing. They're like, what the hell? It's one thing you going around telling women about why they should come to women's matches, but it's another thing being a director of a football club. Like, what are you thinking of? Because I never used to like football. Do you know what I mean, Joe? They were like, what's happened to you? Is this? But I said no, because it's like, the thing is, people like me have to feel comfortable at a football ground and have to feel that I can be a director. And we're talking about board diversity all over the shop. Let's just do it. If I'm not, I have to sort of, on the board, let's say, because when I first joined the board, there was one other woman on the board, and then she stepped down, actually, and I was the only woman on the board for quite a while. And
how many board members are there?
10. But the thing is, then, now it's more or less 50-50, Sam.
Really?
This is how we're progressing at Lewes FC all the time. But back then, a couple of years, I was the only woman. And the thing is, I had to keep valuing my difference, right? And even though sometimes it was a real pain, and I did feel sometimes ignored, or, my voice didn't carry as much weight, sometimes I felt. It's really hard to prove this stuff, right?
Yeah,
I
of
felt.
course.
But what I brought to the board was very different, in terms of like being concerned about whether we had designated breastfeeding areas or not, or introducing Prosecco on tap, to the Rookin, and thinking about what would make someone like me feel comfortable and enjoy the atmosphere at the dripping pan. So that was, I felt that was really useful, and the good thing about it was that because our gate figure kept going up for the women and the men, actually, but let's talk about the women because that's where it quadrupled in a couple of seasons. I kept thinking, well, what I'm doing is good, so I am valuable on the board, and I kept thinking that to myself. But having said that, there were things that I remember having to change about myself. And the main thing, and it's going to sound silly, but like from the minute I was brought up by my mum and dad, anyone that came in our door had to have a cup of tea and a sandwich, and me and my sister had to make it for them. And so when I'd go to board meetings and there'd be like some biscuits out and some tea and coffee and kettle, but no one had a cup of tea. Why? They're all sitting there without anything, right? But no one's making it. So I'd be like, anyone want a cup of tea? And I'd go to the kettle and make a cup of tea. And I thought, what does this look like? I'm the only woman and I'm serving all the men with their cups and their biscuits. And it just feels wrong, and it sort of makes me feel like I'm not on the same level as them. So I've got to stop doing that. So I have stopped. And one of the things that I always say to women if they're going into male-dominated environments is just stay away from the kettle, because that's what I feel magnetised to it, but I've got to stay away. And it's just little things like that, that do make a big difference. And I've learnt that you can say stupid things and it doesn't matter. So I used to think I couldn't, if I was to say something, in a board meeting, it'd have to be ready, thought out, perfect, and just right. But I've heard enough men now say things that are really dodgy, and I think, well, no, you can say what you like, and if it's a mistake, it doesn't matter. So I now have more, I'm much more comfortable there, really. And I'm not saying it's not difficult. I'm not saying I haven't had what we call imposter syndrome, but I don't think it is a syndrome. I think we are imposters. I'm an imposter in football. I've felt it. I still feel it sometimes. And I think it's a good thing to be, because it diversifies the organisation. But definitely, I would encourage more women into male bastions, because if Lewes Football Club is anything to go by, you become very successful economically, and morally you're doing yourself a favour as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that bit, and even the thing around the board meeting with the tears, but I think the other issue there is for that men, there's an issue there with men automatically just assuming, and that's what's got to change. It's not your responsibility to go, I'm going to do that, or even for you to go, I'm not going to. It's got to be a man that's got to get up and do it. But just that men open their eyes a little bit more to that situation and just. I guess that's what
I think it's a good point, Sam. I think it's a two-way thing all the time, but I think it's harder somehow for men to notice when you're in a male bastion already, because they're so used to things the way they are, and they don't feel that difference, and they feel quite at home the way things are, so there's nothing making them change really. But for a woman going into it, I need it to change. I need it to change, and it's my problem. Shouldn't be, but that's the way it feels it is. So that's that. We've got to talk reality, especially in football. I find talk reality, and it still is. The world is still essentially sexist, and there's still a lot of change to be made. And I tell you what, though, if we can do it in football, we can do it anywhere.
100% agree with that. And I think, but what I'm keen, because obviously you at Lewes, from 2017 when you started the campaign, and that's where that change come in. But am I right in assuming that you're still the only football club that do pay equal?
You're correct.
So why, that's 5 years ago, why do you think there's not been more of a, people getting on board with that, and other clubs looking at it, and especially like you say, some of the Premier League? I appreciate that the way things are in football and money, it's all related to that fun, but if you can address it at Lewes, surely there's got to be something along the line. Why do you think this not happened in?
It's an excellent question, isn't it? Because if you look at what's happened to us since Equality FC, it's all sort of brilliant. We've got one of the biggest sponsors in. We've got Lyle and Scott sponsoring our shirts for a six-figure sum. Brilliant. And we've got the women's taking's gone up by 367%, the men's by 82%. Both first teams sold out last season. It's unheard of. We've never done that before in the dripping pan. We beat Liverpool last season. I mean, it's just incredible, right? Just have to say that. And it's just like we've had so much success from equality. We've just having a new pitch relayed, ready for the new season. That's come. The grant for that, £750,000, has come because of our women's team, and the men will of course benefit from that. They're very chuffed about that. So it just shows you how equality really is a rising tide lifting all our boats, not just for one of the teams. Both teams benefit. All the teams benefit. So the thing is, the question is very good. Why aren't other clubs doing it if it's working so well for us? And I think the thing is that we have to look at clubs of different sizes, really. First of all, it turns out it's very hard to run a football club. It's a struggle. Right? And what you prioritise, you have to be quite compassionate, really, to other football clubs, because what you prioritise when you're struggling just to make your men's team work, why would you start investing in your women's team unless you had lots of daughters that loved football and thought, I've really got to make this work for them or something. But otherwise, you're going to really try and put your resources behind the men's team, which are already struggling to keep afloat. Right? This is the case. Yeah, of course. If you look at bigger clubs, like your Premier League clubs and things like that, well, they are starting to wake up, starting to invest. We know the Euros is on at the moment. People are watching. They're not going to ignore that, are they? They're going to put some money behind the women's teams. But if you look at the kind of amounts that they invest in the men's side, there just isn't the market in women's football yet for them to be doing that. So I think that at Lewes FC, I mean, I've already said there are changes they can make, don't cost anything. Play the women on the same pitch. Don't make a big song and dance about it because you've done it once. Do it all the time, right? And anyway, there's lots of things that you can do with social handles and websites and the kind of marketing that you're doing to really resource your women's team the same as the men's. But understandably, because the men's market's so mature and the product is so mature, you're not going to put the same money into it as men like we did at Lewes, because we're the size that we are. We have teams in the leagues that they are, and it just so worked out that we could create that little bit of, send that little bit of sunshine around the globe by putting that inspiration out there and resourcing and valuing the women exactly the same as the men. And so one more thing to say about that, though. When I just said then that we're sending out those little rays of sunshine around the globe, I really meant that, because we've now got 2,300 owners in 38 countries around the world, Sam.
Wow.
And the thing about that is, like, someone in the Seychelles joined the other day, so that brought us up to 38. It's crazy. The thing about that is a lot of them aren't likely to even come and watch because they're all around the world. They're in Chile, they're in Japan. But
inspired by what you
because we're the only club doing it. They can't anywhere else. They can't get that meaning from that £50 that they're investing. And they know that what we're doing is equally resourcing women and men and making that impact on the world, and crucially impact on the hearts and minds of many, many men around the world who hear about us and think, what? Women play football? What? They're good at it? What? They're making money from it? What? It's great, right?
Yeah,
it really
absolutely.
says something about equality to all these people, especially male people, which is who need to change, right?
It is, and I guess it's like you say, there's a historic, archaic way of thinking that, and I guess again trying to create spaces where we change the narrative around what that is, and we've got preconceptions of.
Yeah.
You know, this is how it's always been. So, but that doesn't then necessarily make that right. So, there's got to be small changes somewhere. And like you said, I think that even if the bigger clubs weren't able to embrace, because of financial reasons, whatever that looks like, you can't financially, cripple the club if we've done it like this.
Yeah,
but there's still ways of, like you say, small changes that won't impact the finances as much.
Yes, labelling, positioning, websites. Think
Marketing,
about it. It's not going to cost you anything apart from a little bit of sexist thinking.
yeah. No, it's fascinating. Well, look, Joe, I want to talk. Obviously, you mentioned you, Karen, coming into into football and some of them challenges. Talk to me, Joe, about as a woman in business and what some of the challenges. Again, like you've already highlighted, I guess, with the interviews in the events industry, but then being brave enough to go out and go, right, I'm going to start my own business. Then, if that's not an option, like trying to talk to me about some of the challenges though that you faced.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, the biggest challenge was not having a clue what I was doing because it's business. I've got no business background. I've got no experience of marketing, of finance. I didn't have any access to financial help, and not having the confidence as a woman to ask the questions, or even necessarily knowing what questions I had, just starting from a very, very basic platform and just being hyper aware that I was a woman starting a business, and feeling that around me, and again going to networking events and just not having that confidence to stand in a group of men in suits and say, I'm starting this business. I never even said I'm starting a business. I said I have a business because I felt like I needed to present myself in a certain way. So that was a big thing for sure. And then,
how did you, like, from a mindset, Paul? What then? What encouraged you to really get over that sort of side of it and just go, is this something like a purpose you felt you really needed to do, or out of necessity because the jobs weren't there maybe? Or?
I just knew that it was something that I really, really had to do. Like, I didn't see any other option at that time. I still don't. I still think the mission is really important. I still think that women need representation. And I just felt that I don't know what I'm doing, but the only way that I will get to know what I'm doing is just to keep on this path. And it took an awful lot of resilience, and it was difficult, and I think along the way another big challenge I had was that I was trying to do something that hadn't been done before. So I was trying to bring more joy as a priority into the lives of women. Women work really hard and they deserve to have this social life created for them. And another thing that I've noticed with women in business is that they feel this need to be serious, to be taken seriously, to present themselves seriously. And again, going to these events, and women weren't smiling, and I was thinking, why not? And I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was a very big company and their manifesto was leaked on how women should and shouldn't behave. And it was wear heels a certain length, talk at a lower tone of voice, don't laugh too high pitched. And it was one of the big global companies. And I was just, it's trying to get that mission out there that it's okay to have joy, and joy is concomitant with health. It's so important. And I think we're in a time now where we practice mindfulness, yoga, meditation, and we're really seeing the benefits of all of those, breath work, but no one is still prioritising joy in their life. No one is seeing that the quickest way to access and lower your blood pressure and just regulate yourself is laughter. People, and it's spontaneous, so we're all very time challenged already. So the thought of fitting in yoga twice a week, fitting in meditation, these are all things that you have to think about. But you don't have to think about joy. You don't have to think about laughter. And these things really, really boost your health. And what I've been saying the last couple of years to women is, you know, men have been conducting their business on the golf course and in strip clubs since time began. And they're having a whale of a time. So why is it that women feel this stress to be so serious? It's like, and that's my mission. And I think that is a challenge because women still feel like, oh, I'm not going to be taken seriously if I'm smiling too much, if I laugh and my voice goes too high pitched, you know, and this kind of stuff, it's absolutely crazy.
There's a couple of things really, I guess, from me there, looking at that and just thinking, this is what, the 37th episode I think of recording now, and I think one thing for me I've learned, and certainly me running a businesses for nearly 15 years now, actually none of us really know what we're doing. We're all actually winging it.
Absolutely, yeah.
and that's part of the fun and the joy of it, I guess, that, you know, I was so, I remember going into my first business that I talk about often on here. When I went into I used to run a hair salon, and I went into that as a business owner, not as a hairdresser, and it was part of the Tony and Guy group. And for me, I felt that thought of, I'm a boss here, I need to be really serious. Naturally, a very people would probably describe me as quite happy-go-lucky, generally got a smile on my face, and that's how I was in this salon. I was this serious, but I had to be this boss and not a leader. I wasn't inspiring people, and I think you're right. There's the preconceptions you go into these environments and think, oh, I can't necessarily act in that particular way, and again, it's an archaic way of thinking, even down to how we dress and what we look like. You know, I haven't wore a tie since about 1998, I don't think, but I think like, it's that type of thing, going in and just thinking, get rid of those archaic way of thinking. We've got to, and ultimately, the other point I really want to take from that, and what I love about the whole joy element that you mentioned, is that whatever we do in business or in life in general, it's all about trying to enjoy the process and the journey. You know, I talk about very much, I was very fixated on, I wanted to become this millionaire, and I was chasing this dream, and this is what, and I so fixated on this destination, which I didn't actually know where it was, that you sort of miss out on the...
You're not being present.
You're not present, no, exactly that. And
I
think that's such a powerful thing to talk about and encourage more so. And I'm hoping, I guess, coming out of lockdown, that there's been a bit of a shift. Have you seen a bit of a shift from coming out of lockdown a little bit? There's more, people are a little bit more aware of that and think, you know, what do I want to do? What's my purpose in life? And how do
I definitely think people have recognised what's more important. And I think for me, because I have built this community now, I am also in a little bit of an echo chamber. So when I step outside of that, I'm like, oh, I think I still have work to do. But again, you know, like you said yourself about being serious, like you've got to ask yourself, who are you being serious for though? And does anyone really benefit from that being serious? And are they the people that you're trying to attract? Or do you want to put more joy in your life? And you know, if you speak to anyone that's reaching the end of their life, they're not going to say, oh, I really wish I'd been I'd been more serious with my life, and you know, that I hadn't had as much joy. You know, it's just think about what's important and hold on to that, and smile more. Everyone should smile more.
I love that. So we're always smiling. Exactly. Exactly. Well, it's interesting as you mentioned about that, and obviously I know you talked about sort of the breathing, and as I said, I'm really keen on, especially on the podcast, to talk, like, change some of the narratives that are out there. And I think someone we obviously both know, Yaron Engler, he come on. So we've done a podcast in him about mental health, and he obviously runs a group around men and vulnerability and what that looks like, because there's still, again, that narrative for men to not be vulnerable and not be able to be open. Stuff I think crap needs to change, and that's what we're trying to work with. But I know I see a post recently you guys posted together, which I thought was brilliant, about he runs a group for men.
Yes.
And doesn't mean that he hates women. You run a group for women, and it certainly doesn't mean that you hate men. So I'm keen to just explore like that type of topic and what the challenges, I guess, that you faced around that as well. And
it's interesting, isn't it, that the idea of men versus women is such a trigger for people when it's not men versus women in the first place. You know, if it doesn't matter what product or service you're providing, you're going to have your demographic, and it just so happens that for Yaron, his is men, and for me, mine is women. It doesn't mean that we're anti, you know. And it's so interesting. And we got together and we had a very long conversation about feminism. and just what exactly that means. And it's a shame that it's got such negative connotations attached to it, because if you just strip it back to basics, it simply means equality for men and women, and that is it. But unfortunately, we have got to a point now where we've got extreme feminism, and we've got, if you're a feminist, then you must hate men. And I just think it's just such a shame that we've got to that point. And I think in society, with any mission, with any project, the pendulum always has to swing completely the other way before it can come back and rest in the middle. And I think that's what's happening right now, is that, we're on this plight for equality for women, but that triggers people into thinking that it's something that it's not. And yeah, I've faced some challenges with that in trying to run it, and sitting with Yaron was really interesting, and it was like, well, why don't we do something together? So we're working on this project. We're hoping to get it, something out in September, October, where we will bring both our groups together, because it doesn't mean that they have to be completely separate always. That's just, but he's doing very important work with men that they simply would not feel comfortable talking about in the company of women. And the same with me. We talk regularly. We've got 50 of us in a WhatsApp group, and we have conversations about menopause, and it's simply not relevant to men. It's not that we're shutting them out or we're having this secret society or something, but it's simply not appealing to them. And anything like sport, it might be you're appealing to people that like sport, doesn't mean that you're anti people who don't engage in sport. It's ridiculous, really.
It really is, like you said, and it's just I keep going back to that. I guess the archaic way of thinking is just we're so in our mindsets, and that's what we've grown up in generations, and this it does take time, I guess, but hopefully people like yourself and Yaron and Karen obviously are doing these things and have these missions to help, and that's how we're going to get to a place where we where we want to be, I guess. But I'm also keen to talk about, obviously, around mental health. I know with you, Karen, you've done some volunteering. I mean, you've Mind, I think you've done, and Samaritans in the past, and there's obviously an innate thing within inside you to want to help people, I guess. Is that something? That's just reading back at some research. But I mean, talk to me about that around.
Well, so I my most, I suppose, the job I spent longest at before being a director of a football club was I was a counsellor, and I ran a counselling service for Polygram Records, and I was their in-house counsellor, managed it, so different multi-site, and trained to be a counsellor obviously for a few years, and I don't. Do you know the concept of the wounded healer? No. Right. So if you most counsellors and therapists, people like that that want to help, have usually had some wound themselves that they've partly healed or completely healed, and want to do the same for others. It's what they know about. It's where they're comfortable, and they've got a strong sense of purpose about making a difference in the world, making people feel, I'm not going to say happier, but more themselves. In fact, leading on from what Jo was just saying there, I mean, just being allowed to be yourself, brings a bit of joy, and is good for your health. So mental and physical. So I've always had a strong sense of mission in terms of and a sense of fairness, I suppose, because a lot of the people I counselled weren't there for any fault of their own in many ways. It was more like what society had dealt them, or what had happened in their families and things like that, and it just feels so it's not a level playing field out there, is it, Sam? Is it, Jo? So it's just my I suppose my where I'm coming from is I'm in a privileged position now in my own life. I feel I am. So why not use it and make the best I can out of myself and my life to help others? It's quite simple. Myself in the process, because I'm not, I need help sometimes too.
we all do, don't we?
We all do. We're all human beings. But, it's really interesting what you were just talking about, Jo, because I think being able to be ourselves is so important in this world, and we've put so many restrictions, haven't we, on each other with stereotyping, like with men and with women. And I do feel that the more that we sort of in my world, the more that I campaign for women's football and for women to be footballers, for girls to be playing and learning those lessons of leadership and resilience, even what you're talking about that goes so smoothly into the world of business, making decisions, focusing, teamwork, all the stuff they learn on the pitch, doing it in public so you're not self-conscious all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so important for girls and women. Men have had access to this for years, It's brilliant. But the thing is, it's what I was saying is, if the more we campaign for women to be like that and be able to do that, the more we let men off the hook, right? Because they're all taught to be so stoic, and so they have to earn the money, they have to be strong, like in their mind, and not like show their feelings and be vulnerable, like your own was saying. So the more we break down one set of stereotypes on one side, the more we allow the other side to just be who they are. We get all little boys at Lewes FC women's matches seeing these women as great role models, and meaning they don't have to do it if they don't want to do it. Do you know what I mean? And we get the girls at the men's matches that can see that you can go either way. You can be whatever gender you are and follow your own path. This is what we're trying to say. Be yourself.
I love that.
I love that.
True, isn't it, though?
Absolutely.
You do it in football. Do it everywhere, but let's go with football.
That's so powerful. So I've got twins who are 7.
Have you?
And boy and a girl.
Brilliant.
But Luca, my son, he's very gender neutral. So he's very gender fluid. He, from 2 years old, he's wore dresses and had pigtails, and so he gets up some days and. Like when he first started school, first day went in pigtails and his gingham dress. Next day he go in with he's got long hair, so he'd have it down, and they wear shorts and a t-shirt. And
brilliant.
He's taught me so much about the world, and I'm a bloke who grew up in Dagenham and a stereotypical boy, I suppose, who wanted to be a professional footballer, played at a reasonable standard. That was my life, and everything, blah, blah, blah. And that was how my life went. So I've come from there, and I'm here living in Brighton. I had, I guess, a preconception of what it would be like to have children. Of course, they're both going to be into football mad, want to be Spurs fans like me. Why would they not? And it was the complete opposite. Neither of them have been into football at all, which is fine. But what he taught me about, and I still refer to him as he, and he still refers to himself as he, and some days he's she. But I love the idea of what you're saying. Ultimately, just to live our life true to ourselves and who we are. And
don't worry about stereotypes.
But society wants us to put
I know
some
it
boxes
does.
still.
So annoying. It really, really does. And when we say it, we're kind of, we mustn't put it outside ourselves too much, because I still have stuff to correct in me, and we often have to, like you're learning from your son. We often have to think, well, because I know that I'm sexist inside sometimes. Let's take sexism because we're talking about it, and I have to just correct myself a little bit, and I do that deliberately. And I do it when I notice it. I say it as well on the board or wherever I am, even with the staff, and and I talk about menopause and stuff because I've been there, done that. I tell you that, and a nightmare that is. So I have to talk about it sometimes because it's affecting me. But the thing is that I think I was on a run there and I've forgotten what I was saying, but it doesn't matter. That's menopause brain fog coming in. You see the problem there. But I just think we do really just have to. Own it, change it in ourselves, and then it will change in the outside world as well.
I love that. Joe, talk to me again with yourself around sort of mental health and that type of scenario. Any changes with that for yourself? And obviously, I know you mentioned about ADHD powerhouse, which is on your LinkedIn, which I love. So talk to me a little bit about obviously neurodiversity and with yourself and within the business environment and stuff.
Well, I wasn't diagnosed until I was 36, so I spent most of my adult working life not fitting and not really understanding why. The first thing I'll say about the way the ADHD brain works is that we have a very skewed circadian rhythm. So the idea of going into an office and working 9 to 5 Monday to Friday simply doesn't work, because there will be days where the brain fog is just so heavy, no amount of medication. I mean, I didn't have medication back then, but there were just days where you simply could not get your executive functioning together and get it to work. So it's another reason why you are 3 times more likely to own your own business if you have ADHD, because you work to your own hours. So that's always been a challenge. I was constantly losing jobs through no real fault of my own, but just health. And when I first started building my events business, my husband would say to me, well, your brain is just a muscle and you'll get used to this, and just keep going, like it's not that you're not capable, but I was making myself really sick. And it's the frontal lobe, and it actually there's a different brain chemistry with ADHD, that the harder you try, if you are not managing it and managing your burnout, you'll actually make it worse. Because usually you do have these like memory muscles in your brain, and they expand and the neurons talk to each other and everything develops over time, so you're creating these neural pathways. That doesn't happen with ADHD. They actually frazzle and burn, and if you don't nurture them and look after them, I just kept getting chronic headaches. I was making myself really sick. So health, again, is such a big thing with ADHD that I think people just think it's neurological, so it's just something to do with the way you process and the way you think, but it's very physical. Burnout is very physical. It can bring on onset anxiety and many other things. It gets misdiagnosed as depression quite a lot because they have very similar symptoms. And again, the link between ADHD and feminism is, with ADHD in boys, especially in young children, they have the hyperactive element. So you will see it. You'll see that they've got testosterone surges, and they will fight, and they'll speak loudly, and they'll fidget, and they'll be very physical, whereas girls generally tend to not have the hyperactive side. Right. They're predominantly inattentive. But certainly when I was at school, that ADHD wasn't talked about then. So you're just explained away as a daydreamer or a bit scatty, or not very intelligent, when actually you have this neurological thing. So again, just very, very linked. And I've been misdiagnosed with almost the entire book over my life until I realised at 36 that ADHD was what it was. So,
wow.
Gosh, yeah.
Wow. And then I guess taking that, like you said, into the business world as well, and I guess being able to create your own hours and work when it's best for you, and again living life that's right for you and not
definitely
what society
this is the thing as well, trying to explain. I think we had a very brief conversation downstairs about getting from A to B. The neurodiverse brain goes all like here, there and everywhere from start to finish. Trying to explain my method of working to somebody else is so difficult, because it kind of doesn't even make sense to me at the start. I see an end goal, I'm like, that's what needs to happen, and I'll just find a way of making it happen. But trying to relay that to a team can be quite difficult, and it usually gets to the end goal and people will see this thing that I've created. They'll be like, I've no idea how you got there, but you've done it anyway. So the end result is still the same, but the out-of-the-box thinking and the creativity around it is very difficult, and trying to relay that to somebody else is very difficult. And what I'll also say about the hours, excuse me, when I was saying about working the 9 to 5 in a week, this is why these hours just don't work in our society. First of all, that it dates back to agriculture, this sort of getting up early in the morning, and how many of us are farmers in this room, and just because I might have 1, 2, maybe even 3 days of brain fog in a week, the 2 days that I'm working, I'll be working from 7 in the morning until 2 in the morning, because I'll be hyper-focused. So if you stretch it out over a period of time, the number of hours that you're putting into a project will be the same. It just doesn't fit into that kind of routine way.
I'm a massive advocate, because I've always been a bit of a night owl, and I've tried I've tried to change recently, just with things like, so maybe of an evening I'm not going to bed at silly o'clock, because the kids still get me up early anyway, so so I'm not actually getting a huge amount of sleep. So and I've tried to change a little bit, and I've been getting up like 5 o'clock in the morning and then trying to go to bed a little bit earlier, which doesn't necessarily always work. You've still got this small thing, but I think ultimately, for me, I think it's the Greek Cypriot in me, being Mediterranean. I could get up early, work, and then as long as I have a little bit of a siesta in the day, I'd probably be much better, and I could work again in the evening, and that would be a perfect day for me. Doesn't necessarily allow us in this country to do that.
Well, this is another thing I say to people. Do you want to work 8 hours a day and work at maybe 50% capacity? Or do you want to rest for as much as you can and know that in the 2 or 3 hours that you have to work that day, you're going to produce some really amazing work because you'll be focused on it? But what's the point of sitting at a desk from 9 to 5 and just being tired all day and producing next to nothing? Doesn't make sense.
No. No, it really does. But again, I go back to it's just, and again, I think COVID has changed. It brought things forward so much, didn't it? Where we was so adamant, especially in professional services, I guess, it's so adamant on people, if you're sitting in front of me working 9 to 5, where actually they was forced to work from home, and they actually, because of homeschooling and stuff, people were working at different hours and actually being more productive than they were. So I do think that COVID's really helped in that shape to for people, companies, businesses, everyone to go, you know what,
Definitely.
we can do this a little bit differently. And it takes me quite nicely on actually to the next question, 'cause I wanted to talk about, I always talk about this mainly, this becomes therapy for me a lot, because of what I struggle with, and work-life balance is something that I really do. But talk to me, both of you talk to me about work-life balance with, to a football club and doing the stuff you do, and running your own business.
I think for me it's acceptance of my health, and just really being very accepting of it. And I spoke to, because I also have issues around menstrual health, which is, again, you're more likely to have if you have ADHD, which I find really interesting. I'm not sure of the biological link there, but you're twice more likely to suffer with menstrual pain if you have ADHD, which I find really fascinating. And I spoke to a business coach, and I said, I think I've got to the point now where I can allow myself to have 2 days a month where if I need to stay in bed, then I'll stay in bed. And she said, okay, that's interesting. She said, how long is 2 days usually what you feel unwell for? And I said, no, usually it's about 8. And she was like, so why are you only giving yourself the 2 days? Why not 8 days? You know, the world is not going to fall apart if you don't really focus on your health. And just forgiving myself and accepting that that's the way I need to work hasn't made me any less productive, hasn't made me any less successful. If anything, it's made me just feel more healthy and a nicer person to be around, and all of those things. So I think it's very hard, isn't it? Especially now, like most of the women that I talk to that have their own businesses do currently already also have jobs, and I have a job as well. It's just the way, cost of living, which we don't need to go into because it's utterly depressing, and I don't want to do that. But yeah, I mean, work-life balance is something that I think you have to make work for you, and just not beat yourself up about it. I mean, the last thing you need on top of everything else is that layer of, I haven't meditated today. It's just it's just adding more and more pressure. Like the whole point of meditation is to not feel pressure. So just go with what you can, and just if you can go to bed half an hour earlier because you feel tired, then do it. And if you do feel compelled to get up early one day but not the next, then just try it, and just shuffle things around, and try not to, it's easy for me to say because I can't live a routine, but just try not to live too routinely, because one thing might work one day and who knows what curveball is going to be chucked at you the next day, and your whole schedule goes out of the window, doesn't it? So just try and go with the flow a bit more, and just do what you can when you can. Yeah.
I guess it's sort of setting your own boundaries, isn't it? I guess that's the thing for individuals, trying to look at what you've got as an individual. I need to switch off at that point and do that. I guess just like our difficulty for me, I guess, is the actual switching off the brain, because when you're involved in lots of different projects, whether that looks like trying to actually just take that time out to exercise is a massive thing for me. I'll try and get out most mornings or whatever to exercise. What about you, Kate? What do you do? Do you find it easy to switch off?
No. I am dreadful. I'm the last person you want to ask about work-life balance, really. But I'll tell you whatever pearls of wisdom I can. I mean, basically, I do think it's about, like what Joe was alluding to, like knowing yourself and knowing what works for you, and not if you have the luxury of working for yourself, or of a trusting employer, of doing the hours that suit you when they suit you to do them. And you're right, Sam, about COVID helping us, at least in that one way, with working from home and having those flexible and hybrid ways of working that suit people better, hopefully. But for myself, I think when I was younger, it was really important for me to put work first all the time and not really take care of myself. So I would, at my own cost, I would be doing really quite ridiculous things when I look back. Because I was also a fashion model, and that paid for my counselling training. So I would sometimes be getting up at 5 and going to do shows or something, and then in the afternoon I'd go in to do some counselling. Still with really weird nails on or something, really pointy, shiny nails, and couldn't take them off in time, and I'd be working late because people want counselling after work, and working till about 11 at night, and I did get ill actually. It was not good, and I learned the hard way really that you have to put yourself first sometimes and take care of yourself over work if you have got it out of balance. And so I did. And myself, I've practiced Buddhism for years, which means I chant every day. But if I've actually found that too noisy sometimes, and had to say to myself, "Oh, I'm not going to chant today because it's a bit too noisy for me today." Something like that. So it's like never sort of giving away your power to the outside, whatever that external is really, and trying to really trust yourself, go with it, and see how you feel. I mean, there's going to be times when there's too much to do and there's too much pressure on you, and you just have to get it done. But hopefully those times are few and far between, and in the middle times, in between them, you can pace yourself a bit more. That's all I can say.
It's really cool. I think one person, I think you guys probably know, Camille Pearson.
Yes.
She's been on the podcast, and she's fascinating change, but she made a really valued point about this when we was talking about it. She said she used the aeroplane scenario, like you've got to put so you've got to look after yourself before you can support and look after other people and be the best so to become the best version of yourself, you've got to take care of yourself and look after yourself. And I think that was really powerful. I still haven't been for a float though. I promised I'll go down. I know. My wife's been, she loved it. She said, it's on the list. It's on the to-do list.
But you know what I think? I think at a really deep level, we're all interconnected, right? We know this through networks. We know this through football, and we all sort of chant as one in another way for the team, and we all become like the 12th man or the 12th person or the 12th woman, whatever you want to say. But the thing is, like, if you've got that feeling of being deeply connected underneath it all, then you know that if you're taking care of yourself, you're actually taking care of everyone else as well. It's no difference in a way. So it's like, on that level, I think, we don't need to feel guilty. We don't need to feel bad about it or feel like we're making excuses. No, it's so important, like your friend Camille said. Got to put your own oxygen mask on as well.
I love that. I want to listen to a couple of bits you said earlier about with sport, and I guess with the fact of like the team building stuff, the amount you get from sport that you can take into business. Like I think incredible. About myself, like I said, I've played football all my life, and I think going into different changing rooms and that manto and that camaraderie between people, but you can take that into a business environment from a confidence point of view. I guess I've been able to then, I guess the business I've built over the last 10 years are all about connecting people, bringing people together and sharing stuff, and it's all come from football. So I think, and interesting for what you're saying about what you mentioned, and about certainly from a woman's point of view, and women playing more team sports like that, and football especially, I guess, trying to raise that, and because it's life skills that it can teach you, I think is amazing.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that. What have you noticed, I guess, being involved in football as you have done, and seeing that, like some of the things that they would learn to take in?
Sam, Lewes FC women are my role models in life. The shame is that every year I get older and they get younger, so it becomes more and more like weird. But they are. I watch them on the pitch. I think, that's amazing. Like their nails right on the pitch, and they are strong. And I love the way they're so young, but they kind of they come up with ideas. Like when I'm with them, they'll. If we've got... So I made them all dinner the other night, right, at my house. Like, how crazy is that? 30 people around for dinner, all the coaches as well. I drove myself nuts trying to make chicken for everyone. It was just crazy. But anyway, we ran out of cutlery.
That's a lot of chicken wings.
That's a lot of chicken. We ran out of cutlery and everything. But anyway, and they're all coming like, I'll do this, I'll do that. Oh, don't worry, Karen, I'll go and get that, and I'll put that out there in the garden, and da-da-da-da-da. And they're all organised immediately because they're a team.
That's so cool.
And I'm just so impressed by them all. They don't get phased. Like I get quite flustered sometimes. They do not get. They're all calm and they know what they're doing, and they do it with a smile. They do it with humour, and I love it, right? And I learn from them all the time, and I'm not ashamed to say it. And this is one reason I want more girls and women to come and watch these amazing women footballers, because there's so much to learn. But I'll tell you something. We've got a head of performance at Lewes FC called Kelly Lindsay, and she used to play for US Women, She also used to coach the Afghan women's team, and and called out a sexual abuse scandal there. She's amazing. And also the Moroccan national teams, both the men and the women, and set up a club in Hong Kong and all this. She's quite amazing, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, I find her very inspiring because she has always been in professional setups of football and learned all there is really about football and how you conduct yourself as a professional person. She talks about being a professional person, not just a professional footballer. You know, reliability, turning up on time, you know, being accountable to the rest of the squad and all of this stuff. And she talks about it, and I learn all the time from her. And she says things like, you wake up in the morning. I'm not going to do the American accent because it's really embarrassing. You wake up in the morning and you look in a mirror and you just say, I am a champion, like that to yourself. And I'm thinking, wow, if I did that every day, I'm sure I'd perform better. You know what I mean? It's just like, this is so great, this confidence and this kind of ability and this kind of always wanting to give 1% more every day. I love it. And that's, you know, this is why I stay in it, right? I get so much personally, you know, from the footballing arena and the men and women in it, because there's some amazing. We wouldn't have had equality at Lewes FC if it hadn't been for amazing male allies. Do you know what I mean? Amazing. And I really feel very fortunate and honoured actually to do what I do and be where I am. You know, we are making history. So every day I have access to these wonderful lessons in life that I'm afraid a lot of girls and women, like you've had them, Sam, a lot of girls and women don't have. You know, and I wish I'd had it when I was a young girl and I was scared to ask a question or scared to go out in front and direct things. I was scared to do all that because I felt like as a woman I just had to present myself well, or I just had to say yes and no and smile and laugh and be polite. You know, ridiculous thoughts I had in my head when I was an intelligent person even, I think. So I'm really glad, you know, that there are all these things that I witness every day when I'm at the Dripping Pan, because I'm there a lot, and I see on the pitch, and I just feel very lucky to be in that environment now.
I bet. But I think, and just obviously, I think to take some credit for you as well by how much you must inspire that next generation of women as well.
Massively.
So especially going into, like I say, that even that thought process, as you've alluded to, of going, you know, which we all get from time to time, but sitting there thinking, oh, should I say that? I don't want to ask that question. I don't want to look silly. But to be in an environment, especially a male-dominated one, when it comes to football, and again, you know, I don't necessarily maybe know then what they do about football. I can't really say that, but still having the courage to be able to do that.
Don't forget, Sam, I've been in a lot of therapy over the years. It's true though, Joe. I have been in, my first therapy was when I was like 18, 19, where I was really, you know, I was actually very angry and didn't know I was angry, because like often women and girls, you know, they can be sad, but they can't be angry. And men can be angry, but they can't be sad. So men will present to a counsellor as angry, and they need to get them to cry, really, and get to the nub of the issue. Sure. Whereas as a girl, I was very angry inside, but I didn't know it. I thought I was just depressed. Anyway, and anxious, actually. But my counselling really, really helped me. And then as you train to be a counsellor over the years, you have to be in counselling at the same time. So I was in therapy group, I had my own one-to-one. So I feel like I have got the courage, and I have got, you know, the kind of self-belief to be there. Just about. I'm on the edge of my seat sometimes. But that's where I think it all comes from, really.
That's amazing. And it's that ultimately anything I think I want to teach the kids is that self-belief is just key, isn't it, in life, in business, whatever it is we do. If we can believe in ourselves, we ultimately...
Look at the Lionesses. How did they do that performance the other night against Norway without self-belief? That's what they had. There was no stopping them after that first penalty. And that's what we need, don't we? We need that.
And it's great, isn't it? Like, alluding to that, we're a couple of days away from the quarter-final, and it's amazing, isn't it, what, like you say, we're talking about how far I guess the game has come as a whole, but you know, I listened to I think it was the High Performance podcast, and Steph Houghton was talking on there recently, and just fascinating to listen to, like, when she first started and being in mixed teams and stuff, and you know, but actually then getting picked in her own right and having to, but it's only people like that, people like yourself, who will challenge what the status quo is at the moment, and because that's how change happens, isn't it?
I mean, so I like what we're doing at Lewes FC, but let me tell you now, a lot of the women players that have come to us over the years, we've accidentally radicalised them because they've had it all normalised for them to play with the boys and not have boys won't shake their hand. They have to put their jumper over their hand before they shake their hand, or they had to travel a long way to get to girls' teams to play with other women and girls, or be a small girl in a women's team because there weren't enough, and all that they've normalised all that. So when they come to us and we say, no, of course you get the same sponsorship as the men. No, of course you get to play on the same pitch. Of course you get the same time to eat your food. This is what happens at other clubs, right? The women don't get the same time to eat their food or the same food. Of course you get the same travel.
I mean, what's the logic behind that?
Because they just don't value them
different time.
Yeah, it's dreadful, honestly, the way this resources are allocated. We're talking basics like what they wear, what they eat, how they travel. It's just dreadful. But anyway, so when they come to Lewes FC over the years, when we've said all this to them, they start remembering all the terrible things that have happened to them and talking about their stories and the obstacles they've had to overcome that they didn't even know were obstacles at first because they'd normalised it so much. So it's just, there's a long way to go.
There is, I guess that's it, isn't it? It's normalising what you've achieved at Lewes. That's what should be normal.
We've set an example, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's incredible to see. Like you said, and even, I guess, like you say, well, now with televised games and, 30,000 the other day at the Amex, that as a whole was amazing, wasn't it? I know there's a lot of families there, which is great, which is surely what football is about, and inspiring that next generation.
It's all right, isn't it? Yeah. Families. I mean, at our women's matches, we get a lot of families, and it's more of a sort of 50-50 gender mix, still a bit more men than women, actually. Men's matches, 90% men.
Really?
So there's going to be different atmospheres at different matches, and that's all right. And one of the things I really want to see happen, and that we all do on the board at Lewes FC, is for the women's game to grow according to its own values and not just mirror the men's. So if someone says to me, like they did the other day at the Amex when we were watching England v Norway, this is like a One Direction concert. I was like, the thing is, I've never been to one, but I was like, great, that's brilliant. I hope Harry Styles is here, But, that's fine. If that's the way the women's game is progressing, let it. It doesn't have to mirror the men's. They're different. It's brilliant.
I feel like you said, just accepting what it is as we do with ourselves, what's best for us,
exactly.
and
let it grow according to its own
organically,
values.
Because ultimately, like that, from an entertainment value point of view as well, that's where people, if that's what's entertaining, and that the quality of football is great, and the people out there, and like you said, I guess what you sort of mentioned there, Joe, what I find difficult to understand with the comparison is that in the men's game, everything that they do is to get the ultimate out of that performance. So nutrition and equipment, everything is to get the best from that. So surely, if that is what is the best, then you mirror that. If that is what is the best, to get the best performance out of the women as well, not to go, well, no, we get the best out of the men, and then the women can fit in and around that. Like that's surely, just from a logical point of view, if you're running you're running two teams, you want that team to be a successful.
Yeah, but it's about what you actually care about. What you actually care about. I mean, one of the things, when we put stuff on Twitter at Lewes FC, one of the stock answers we sometimes get, if we actually are making waves with a new advert or a new campaign, is nobody cares. That's
really?
That's what a lot of women's football, no one cares. Yeah, that's one of the stock answers they put, and it's actually true to some extent. If you if you want to know the reason why, at Birmingham, the men had an hour in the canteen, 45 minutes in the canteen to eat their food, and if they went over that 45 minutes, the women's half an hour was less and less and less, so they only had 15 minutes sometimes to eat their food. The men don't know that. They're not deliberately doing it. It's whoever makes the decisions on the board, right? That where the problem is. So it's it's look at the boards, look at who's making the decisions and who cares about what.
Yeah, and again, it's the same with everything, isn't it? It's whatever change needs to happen from the top down, doesn't it? It's got to happen within that environment, isn't it?
Well, there has to be pressure from the bottom on decision makers, but the decision makers themselves are going to be the ones that affect the change at the end of the day. It's quite simple, isn't it? So what's on their minds? What are they? What's on their agenda?
Yeah, what's the I guess looking at what the barriers are for people to not want to change that. Why would you not want it to be?
Well, the thing is at Lewes FC, because we're community owned, our whole thing is about creating value for our community. So we're already primed to look at things in a slightly different way on the board. Whereas at boards of other clubs, if they're just trying to squeeze profit for someone, then or some state, I don't know. If they're just trying to do that, then they won't be thinking about development and fairness and those kind of things that we're always thinking about, because we are beholden to the communities that own us. Them, no one else.
It could be as simple as, if you're not impacted by it, you're not thinking about it.
Well, exactly.
So, so if you're not a woman, then why would you be thinking about whether it's, because sometimes we're just in our own bubbles and we haven't got the space or the capacity to have that level of compassion and empathy unless someone's actually presenting us with it. So I think
it's absolutely true.
It's about the change makers. It's about standing up and saying, no, this is what's happening, because otherwise, if it's not happening to you, you're not. That's where a lot of unconscious bias comes from. Racism. The amount of people that might say something like, "I don't see colour," and it's like, well, it's not.
You better start seeing it. Or we're not going to stop
it's like, you're not seeing colour because you've never been affected by the colour that you are.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
I think you're right, and it's similar with women in those roles and equality and what that looks like. Similar with the Black Lives Matter scenario that me and my wife spoke about earlier, and it's saying that we, because of our white male privilege, I guess you don't look at it from that point of view. So you're just, I guess your mind is just set in a certain way, and it's got to be like you say, people have got to. We've got to speak out about stuff, and we've got to pull people up on it.
Definitely.
And we've all got to work together.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. Men and women who are, all different races, all different sexualities, all different sexual orientations, all work together. Otherwise, we're not representing, and we won't change.
And it's important to not demonise people who don't necessarily understand as well, because this is about raising awareness. People might think a certain way because they simply haven't been presented with the facts or the issues. So we have to be really careful, I think, in education and when trying to make change, to not see people who don't understand as bad or like we have to come from quite a loving, I think, place to be able to educate people and try and just, do you want to get people on the same path by educating them, or do you want to keep kind of attacking them so that kind of never goes away?
I think that's true, and I think a lot of it is about conversations and what we. So at the Dripping Pan where we play, because it's community owned, we all feel like we try and cultivate a feeling that it's our front room, and that what we wouldn't have in our front room we wouldn't have there. So if we hear abuse. We would have a conversation about it, because they're our guests. Your guests, you don't just say get out, right? You have a conversation, unless it's really bad, and then you do say get out.
So there's always a line, right?
It's always there possible. There's always a line. But the thing is, I was going to say, I had a conversation with a couple of away fans at a men's match, last season, where they were saying to me, apropos of nothing, and I didn't even know them, but they came up to me and said, "Hey, your player, Ollie, he's gay, isn't he?" Like that. And I thought, what? And I said, well, why is that an issue? What is the point here? Oh, well, it's the way he does his eyebrows. They're gay, right? Because he's done little shavy bits in his eyebrows. And I was like, what are we even talking about here? And they go, well, why would a man care that much about his appearance? And I said, well, first of all, that's one question. But the other question is, we're all human beings. If someone's gay or not, it's not the point. We're all human beings here together. So now another person might have found it hard to have that conversation, but it wasn't triggering me too much, and I was genuinely slightly discombobulated by I don't even know what they're talking about. What is the point here? What is this conversation, right? So, but the thing is, we're all primed that it's like our front room. We will have conversations with people.
That's great.
See what is it that they mean. Unpack it. If they think it's a joke, why is it a joke? What's the joke? What's funny? Explain it to me, because I don't get it. Things like that, and we're all kind of up for that. And we'll have those conversations.
That open communication is so important, isn't it? Like with everything within any business platform, whatever that looks like. I talk about culture on here a lot, and I think one thing, listening again to the high performance one with Steph talking about, the England team and the Lionesses going and winning 8-0, like they all went out and played for each other, and that culture that they've created, you can tell like there's this strong family culture that they've got in there, and that's what makes winning teams and winning. Again, I allude back to the salon. I always say that it failed because I think I've got the culture wrong. I went in with what my preconception of what it was like to be a leader, blah blah blah. So I think I always talk about culture. But I think one thing I wonder, and I'd be interested to get your views on this. I guess I'm generalising a little bit, but women maybe have a better soft skills and empathy, and so to be able to, because traditionally you look at, I'm going back probably a lot further than, but traditionally in a men's changing room, for example, there were not necessarily a lot of soft skills going on there, and how you can, and I've been there and been on the other end of it, so you sort of go, but that doesn't necessarily then create a great culture within a club, within a business, because again, relating everything, sport and business, but because they're so similar and creating a strong culture. So I'm being like from, I guess, so much that the men's game could even learn from what the women leaders.
I think girls can be incredibly mean, though. I mean, let's not lose sight of
No,
that as well.
No. And again, I guess I'd be interested to see, to get the different angle on that as well. Is that potentially bitchiness and etc. etc.
Yeah, but I think again, coming down to skills, that's why I would love to see more of us working together as a team. And it's okay to recognise that there are certain skills that women will always probably major in, and that men will have skills that major in, and that's why you use those skills and you bring different skills to the table to make something work. So I think, like, with the locker room banter, you probably would, I don't know, take them out for days where you have the men's team and the women's team mixing, and see how that works, and see what they can learn from each other.
It is. It's really great when we do that, but we don't get to do it that often just because of everyone's time and how it all works. But I mean, this is a tricky one. I wouldn't want to take away from the changing room banter and the odd hairdryer or whatever, because it's essential. And our coaches on the men's side, Tony and Joe, are amazing, but they are proper football coaches. They will shout, and but they select carefully. They don't want. Well, I don't know if I can say it, but I'll say it. They don't want any dickheads on the team, is what they say. Right? So they select carefully because they want to know who they can develop and who they can work with properly. And they will shout at them, of course they will. And on the women's side, I think there is a slightly different way of approaching coaching with women. That was almost a poem. And I do think, you maybe don't pick one woman out and start shouting at her or something in front of everyone else. Because there is a confidence issue there's a confidence gap and an authority gap between men and women. So you do treat people differently according to who they are. So I think it is an interesting thing. But one thing that I've, that we've noticed at Lewes FC is that when the men and women do get together, they do learn from each other. There are skills that they both have that they can learn from each other, and it's an amazing thing to see. It's like seeing equality in action, really, because we've got the men's and the women's teams. We've got them both. I mean, you were right what you said earlier, Joe. You can't have equality with just women. You need both. So it's and value them for who they are and what they bring to the table, really, which is again a little mirror of society, really, isn't it? If we could all do that, it'd be a great place.
I love that. And I do think you're right. I think again, I relate it to, from a business point. Ultimately, it's just about knowing people and being able to communicate that with people. Because some people actually respond better to not necessarily criticism, but they need a little bit sometimes, and they respond well to that. And because other people do need that arm around the shoulder, but that only comes from being a good communicator, doesn't it?
Well, these are the skills of a great coach, aren't they? Discerning who needs what, and also you've got that incredible privilege of picking who is in your team and trialing, so you can see how people work together, and you can see if you're going to get. We don't like mean girls. We sort of edge them out of the team and get new ones in. They're going to work together and know what our culture is, and we've got very strong culture at Lewes. They all know the culture and their values. It's we over me, all the time, and have to really muck in And there will be leaders emerging, because you need a captain and vice captain and a little leadership team. Brilliant. Yeah. But everyone is in it together, and no one is better than another one, and that's how it is.
Yeah, amazing.
Love that.
Look, we're sort of coming towards the end, so I just want to finish up before we go into quick fire questions. Tell me, what does the future hold for you both, like in regards to the plans of working together and moving forward?
Gosh,
we haven't even got onto the sisterships yet, have we?
We haven't. No.
I should explain. One of the things,
please do.
That we developed at Lewes FC, we kind of formalised the women's groups that were coming to the Dripping Pan to watch Lewes FC women, and a lot of them we called unwelcome women that had never really been welcomed to football before, even if it wasn't deliberate. In the respect of there being a 50-year ban on women's football in this country, and it becoming culturally much more acceptable to watch or play if you're a man, and all the signals were there, weren't they? On the telly you saw men's matches, back in newspapers all you see still is men. So the signs are all there, so women are largely, whether they like it or not, unwelcome. So we've made them welcome, but we had to go and tell them that they were welcome, and we had to go and explain why they were welcome and what had happened in the past, get them along. And at first I went to women's groups like Brighton Women's Centre, Women's Institute groups, WEP groups, little feminist groups, and that I could find in Brighton, or Lewes Women in Business, and Lewes Women's Rugby Team. Asked them to come along, literally asked them, physically go there and say, come, and this is why. And they all did, and it was brilliant, and it all went very well, and they gave us feedback, and we changed things, got vegan milk in, vegan pies, all the rest of it, as well as all the chicken pies. And it's all great, and got little book talks and things, choirs coming before matches. We make it interesting, appeal to different people that maybe weren't going to come because of the football initially, but would come back because of the football. And so we formalised this into a group called the Sisterships. So any group that empowers girls or women in some way can join Lewes FC Sisterships. And what it is basically a group who communicate together and mutually support each other in some way, and can network physically at matches together, chat to each other, enjoy the game, have fun, have joy through the entertainment of a football match. And, and they're also different. Like Joe's group is the co-women group that Joe runs, but there's also the police, Sussex and Surrey Police, who run a he for she thematic campaign within them. And then, as I say, the women in business groups, or the Brighton Women's Centre, RISE, the domestic abuse charity, Survivors Network, we Girls Network. We work with all of them in different ways. Maybe sometimes it's providing players to inspire, or we raising money for them at the gates, with collection buckets, or publicising them with our socials, and running with the police. We've run courses for them on using football as a vehicle for whether it's leadership or whether it's team building, whether it's commanding the respect of the changing room, whether it's taking up space and using your voice in a women's football chanting workshop. We've done all these sort of things, and we've had a lot of fun. But that's the Sisterships, and Joe's group has recently joined, because we met recently, didn't we?
Yes. We came and watched a game, and then I heard you speak at the Acumen Convention, and we had a chat after that, didn't we? So it's just about finding those like-minded women and expanding your voice. And I just think as time goes on, I'm definitely going to be becoming an owner at some point. I'm excited about that. Yes.
It's cool, isn't it, becoming an owner of a football club?
I know. I mean, why would you not want to do that? That's amazing. And we'll be coming to games and supporting. Looking forward to hosting some events at the Dripping Pan. So it's an exciting time, and I love that you're reaching out to all the different networks. RISE especially, because I'm an Ask Me ambassador for RISE, so I step out into the community and just help people I'm not a therapist or work for them as such, but I could go out and I could talk about the work they do and signpost people to the help they need.
Amazing.
So and before COVID, did a lot of fundraising events for RISE as well, so it'll be good to sort of be connected with them again through you. And just
they're great. They really
they're
are
amazing.
It's a phenomenal charity.
Yeah,
we've worked with them because I do the charity issue at the end of each year in SBT, where we just give free space to raise awareness for various different charities, because there's so many amazing charities. We've just seen some of them don't have the budgets of maybe sort of Chestnut Tree House and people like that, so trying to create spaces for them to be able to promote what they do, and just for free space. So but I know of RISE, and it's an amazing charity. So
they're fantastic.
I mean, the Sisterships are all fab, and I follow them all on the socials and stuff, and that's sort of like it's sort of like a little bubble in itself. But that's really useful because I can take that back to Lewes FC and work out what we need to do. So with all the violence against women and girls that was very high profile last year, feeding that back into the club, we came up with the men's team deciding to do Call Him Out and call out, misogynistic and sexist behaviours within ourselves, within themselves, and anywhere at the football ground, which they have done, and they continue to. They made public pledges about it, and they're all sort of big, strong footballers, like role models, and they're going, no, we're not having it. If we hear ourselves accidentally say something, or anyone else, we'll call him out. # call him out.
Love that.
Yeah, they're great, and that came from sisterships, from seeing, because there were a lot of women talking to other women, and that's not how you're going to change things.
Yeah. So true.
Like you said, I listened to the conversation throughout the last hour or so, very much so. And what I think is brilliant about it is all about unified. That we're the only way actually we really make change is to do it all be on the same page and all do it together. It's not about women are fighting for equality in that way and men are over here and we're not involved in it. We just go, okay, it's about the men getting involved in that and looking at it from and all working together in a partnership, and that's true collaboration, I guess. And
I just love people to come and meet our footballers and our coaches, because often the men footballers will turn up at some of the women's matches and vice versa, and really happy to introduce you, Joe, anyone that's at the match to some of these amazing male footballers and the women footballers, because I just think they're wonderful. They really are. They're really thinking about stuff and using their platforms.
I guess that's it as well, isn't it? It's that they've got a platform to be able to do it. So if you've got that right message, like you said, I guess earlier, about from a marketing perspective and what that looks like as a football club and how you can change the right messaging, and if every football club got behind that and started to change, then
we'd change the world. No question. We'd have changed culture if we did that with every football club.
Because that surely, that's got to be the world that people generally that we want to live in, isn't it?
It's the world I want to live in. What about you, Joe?
Absolutely, 100%.
There's three of us in here.
I can't imagine it any other way. It's just
let's start from here.
Why would you not want everyone to have the best quality of life? What's the alternative to that? So,
it just makes sense.
Love that. Listen, that's a great way to sort of come to. Look, like I said, there was a couple of quick fire questions that we sort of finish up with. So we generally have three, so I'm going to ping one at each of you, and we'll go from here. So first to you, Joe, what one piece of advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Prioritise joy, allow yourself to be coachable, and be fearless with what you believe in. That's three.
Love that. I love that. Awesome. Fearless. Karen, one for you. Who's inspired you in your career and why?
But you know what, I'm going to say the women footballers, because I've already spoken about them, and I honestly do find them continually inspiring. So, and watching it on the TV, even the Lionesses, yes, them.
Are England going to win the World Cup?
Of course they are, Sam.
Yes! That's what I wanted to hear. What? Prediction for the last one. Prediction for Wednesday.
Oh, you can lead with that one.
2-0 to us.
Yeah. I'm going to take that on Betfair. I'm going in with that. Right, last one. This is to both of you, if you can, just recommend a book or podcast to any of our listeners that you maybe listened to or read that has inspired you, influenced you in some way. I
would have to say Gabor Mate. I have the back catalogue of all of his books. He's a neuroscientist, doctor, and he has a very long history of ADHD himself, of trauma, and he's just like this living, walking guru. I went to watch him speak in London a couple of weeks ago, and at the end he said, if anyone has a question, stand up and come to the podium. And I thought, everyone's going to be a little bit introverted like me. Like, no, it's all right. About 50, 60 people jumped out of their seats, ran up to the front, and he had... it was like watching a life magician at work. Really? These people turning up to the podium with very, very complex problems, each one different. And he was just knocking these answers out and creating healing and magic in front of our very eyes. He's just the most...
That sounds like a good one.
There's a 2-hour documentary called The Wisdom of Trauma, and I would I would tell everybody to watch it. It's absolutely incredible, and how he's just got so much compassion for one human being. He's really quite incredible. So, Gabor Mate is mine, definitely.
Thank you very much.
It's a good one. Yeah, I would say one podcast that I have listened to a lot that's been really helpful has been How to Own the Room. Do you know that one by Viv Groskop?
No, but I feel like I need that. So
you will like it. You will like it, Jo. Look it up. It's called How to Own the Room. And what she does is she interviews, sort of famous or semi-famous women that basically speak in public for one reason or other. Maybe they're authors, maybe they're politicians, or maybe they've got their own business and they got to the top of it and they kind of have to talk about it a lot. And she kind of asks them questions about their top tips and how they do it and experiences that they've had. But what she does in her podcast, which I found really interesting, found really useful for my own brain, is that she kind of stops every now and again and says, so what we've learned here is that you do this, this and this, and kind of reminds you what you've just learned so that it goes in.
Oh, that's good.
It's really helpful, and it's very practical, you see.
That's genius.
And so I find it I find that useful, and some of the people that she interviews are obviously very interesting. I was listening to Kate Moss, the author, not the model, the author. She was sort of saying how she prepares, and even she's interviewed Hillary Clinton and people like that, and talking about how they prepare. And Carrie Gracie, that Campaign for Equal Pay in the BBC, she talks a lot about networking and the support that she's got before she even goes into a room to ask for a pay rise or something. She has to sort of have a night crying on her friend's shoulders first, and then. But it's so interesting. It's so sort of these are real tips, real experiences, and I've listened to that a lot, and as a result, I've written on my computer a little post-it that says, "You belong in this Zoom." Right, because that's the room sometimes, isn't it? The Zoom. You belong in this Zoom, because sometimes I think I'm not, worthy of being there or something. So I've written that as a result of that podcast, and it's helped me a lot.
Amazing. Listen, thank you both so much. It's been what a fascinating conversation.
It's been real,
brilliant.
Sam.
It really, listen, I've really enjoyed it, and what you're both doing in the world of business, sport, and making game changers, I guess we can say, really making a change, and it's amazing, and keep doing it and keep doing great stuff. So listen, thank you so much. It's been an awesome episode. I can't wait to share it.
I'm just honoured to be in Karen's company, to be honest.
I'm honoured to be in both of your companies. Stop it. Oh my God.
That imposter syndrome. We need to get rid of that. Awesome. And that, as they say, is a wrap.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Sam. That was fun.